Hey, you like cars? So, just doing my normal little stretch to get my vocals and a diaphragm ready to speak to y'all. But you know what time it is. We're here again. CarQuicks podcast. It's Cameron Biggs, your host. I'm not ready yet, but we're going to be ready in a second. Let me go ahead and get the clappers. So, CarQuicks podcast, episode 83. Cameron Biggs, your host. I'm back again, another week, another wonderful week of car news. But before all that, how are you doing? How are y'all feeling? How is the family, children, significant others, the goals? As I always say every week, I want to check in and see how people are doing. And sometimes I get feedback. I've had some people comment and say, hey, I like the positive beginning. I'm doing well. Some people have given me some problems they've gone through, kind of car related, but in general, I've gotten some feedback. So I'm just saying, my little intros is working. And I also like just saying how people are doing. Glad you can join me for another episode. It's another week. You're back here with the greatest automotive podcast on the planet. Yes, sir. Sometimes you just got to claim it. It may not be statistically what it is, but sometimes you just got to claim it. When they were saying like best rapper alive, you just got to say it. Own it, claim it. Best podcast for automotive around right now. Now, there are some other ones too out there that do a very great job. But listen, you want to talk about the car news, have a quick little one-on-one discussion, you came to the right place. So what are we going to talk about today? So this week there was a good amount of information and some really good discussions to have when it comes to just automotive companies in general, like what they're deciding to do, how they're feeling about something. And before I do any of that, I don't know why, but I'm feeling like kind of toasty. I'm like legitimately like, hold on. I feel kind of warm right now. So in order to combat that, I'm turning the air down in the house because right now I'm not feeling how hot I feel right now. Okay, so air is being turned down because legitimately I was just sitting here like, why am I feeling kind of warm? Like unacceptable. Now, back to what I was saying. So let's get into some news. Let's drive right in. We're going to go back to Dodge. They have been a subject of many podcast episodes, and they're just going to continue to go forward because they're like I've said before, they're trying to just right the ship of what they had previously said they were going to do and what they need to do moving forward. So the CEO of the Dodge, his name is Matt, I want to say McAleer, McAleer. He had a discussion with thedrive.com, his automotive publication website that does a lot of reviews and industry stuff in the automotive industry. Very good website. Check them out. I love reading their news on there. He sat down with them to discuss the future of just what they were doing as far as the engine development, models coming out, and they specifically honed in on where the V8s. Like, what's going on? What are we doing? Are we putting HEMIs back in? Are we not doing it? Or we are doing it? We don't want to do it. Just asking a question that everybody wants to have answered. And he said, and I quote, "The only thing that I can say is that if history can tell us anything about the future, all those powertrains I listed off," and let me go to that. When he was talking to them, he discussed all the powertrains that Dodge had developed up until this time. He talked about the 3.5 liter V6s. He talked about the V8s, the 6.2 liters, the 5.7. He talked about all those motors up until right now when they stopped. When Stellantis, the company and the old CEO, decided that they weren't going to be building those anymore and they were going to move into a more EV related future, he was saying up until that point they had made all these engines. So continuing the quote, he said, we're always looking at ways to find best in class performance, to build on performance and to push the boundaries. We don't want to stand still at Dodge, and we don't plan to. There will be powertrain variations that continue to come. We haven't even launched the SRT yet. He's talking about the Charger. So we still have to get into that. And who knows where we go if the business case makes sense for a V8 and there's potential. So he's not taking it off the list. He's not taking it off the table. Matter of fact, when the old CEO decided to leave over Thanksgiving weekend, when he was eating some, yams and mashed potatoes, he's like, I'm out. This is already falling apart. Numbers are down. The whole sales are sliding. Everybody hates me. So the new CEO comes in. He says that everything now is kind of back on the table, but all of this now take some time. Now, I will say this. In my opinion, even asking if there's a business case is kind of hilarious because your business was the case a couple years back. It was just trajectory of people buying SRT, Hellcats, and Chargers, the Brotherhood, all this stuff. The back was muscle and four-door. Like, you were doing all of it. Everything was already showing you that the business case to put V8s in all these sedans and SUVs and coupes was there because everybody was buying them. Now, I'm not saying that they were selling them hand over fist. I'm sure at some point the sales kind of tweaked a little bit when it comes to buying these cars because they're not cheap. They were never cheap. An SRT Hellcat was like an $80,000, $70,000 car. So what I'm saying is that him asking about a business case, I would say that's already been answered. You know you have one because of how much backlash you've gotten for the fact that you stopped making them and how bad the sales currently are. Sales came down. And it wasn't because of an EV charger. It was because the EV charger was the only option and you axed the production of the one that everybody was buying. Like I said before and I said last week, if you were to do this and you introduced an EV alongside of the ICE-powered version, we wouldn't be in this situation. We would not be in this scenario. Granted, I don't know the future, but I could tell you from what I'm seeing in the industry and what people have said, if you had done that, you would have been in a better position right now. So he also talked about the development costs. So the issue is they kind of burn their own bridge. They stopped making a production of V8. Now they have to introduce a new one. The new one has to fit into the new chassis. The new one has to follow the regulations. The new one has to basically adapt to whatever the ever-changing CAFE rules are that are happening right now, because a lot of that is politically charged. So some stuff, whoever's sitting in the seat now as the president or whoever's sitting in the party there might have a different idea, and the next party might come in 4 years from now and have a different idea. So what he was saying to the driver when he's having this conversation, he said, if we start developing a new V8 right now, we have to spend 2 years doing that, and hopefully no rules change. So we might have the idea now. It's going to take almost 2 years to develop this motor, put it out, have it in different variations, different bodies, different cars, things like that. And then maybe when we're about to launch, they're like, hey, guess what? We ain't doing that no more. That ain't going to fit no more. We need to now do something else different. Now, of course, I say all this to say, if you already know this, get the ball rolling. You already saw what happened when it comes to the business, when it comes to how it was handled previously. So, hey, you ain't got no time to waste. If it's going to take up to 2 years to develop some brand new idea of what a V8 could do inside of these cars, then I suggest we get back to the drawing board as soon as possible. Like, we need to hurry up and make that happen as soon as we can, because really, you ain't got nothing to lose. If the numbers are already sliding, if we're already losing, then what are we waiting for? I mean, like, listen, just go all for it. So, what I will say is, it's good to see that they're not ignoring what needs to be done, especially when it comes to what people are asking for, what they're buying. And they're not the only ones. See, what Dodge is learning, other companies have learned too. And other ones are learning in real time. I feel like a lot of people are watching a lot of these manufacturers make certain mistakes, and they're looking at their board members like, hey, you see what they're doing over there? It didn't work out. We need to reverse course, okay? When it comes to electric, EV powertrains, when it comes to hybrid, when it comes to different motors, different powertrains, all these things. The thing about these V8 motors and why everybody keeps talking about it, it kind of feels like you're beating a dead horse, right? There are some people that like the future and progressing and doing different changes. So I can understand them looking at V8s and thinking it's some archaic technology that doesn't need to keep being made. But realistically, from power to performance to reliability to how it drives and how it feels, I mean, it's hard to argue why everybody likes that engine. You can have turbo 4s and V6s and all these things, but there's a reason why V8 motors were made and why people loved them so much, for how they drove, how they felt, the reliability of it, and the power you could make. So it's nothing to knock. Now they may need to update things for the current rules in the future, but I don't think it should be taken off the board. So Dodge is saying it ain't over till it's over. So they're still thinking about it, and they're not the only ones. BMW this week said exactly the same thing. They said, and they were way more direct. So Frank Weber was talking to Automotive News. He is a leader of the development of BMW, been in there for years. He said, quote, before he didn't have to spend too much time thinking about this. He said, There are markets such as the US and the Middle East where you cannot replace V8s with inline six hybrids. This is not about performance. They are comparable in terms of acceleration, but customers like the smoothness, sound, feeling of a V8. We will continue to offer V8s. I want you to kind of hone in on a specific line there. It's not about performance. And I've said this in previous podcasts. I've said it many times. I've said if you're looking at these cars, if you're looking at them as a sum of numbers, then if I give you those numbers at a higher point in something else, it should satisfy you wanting those numbers. I'll give you an example. If we have V8 motors, right, and everybody's like, y'all keep talking about this stuff, but you can get an electric car that has twice as much power, or you can get a hybrid V6 one that has as much power, if not more, and the same acceleration. It comes back to what I said before. It is not only about the numbers. I'm not saying that we're not currently in a horsepower wars where the numbers are skewing a lot of things. It's a very nuanced conversation. On one hand, the numbers are making people think that a 500 or 400 or even a 300 horsepower like hot hatch or a little coupe isn't enough. They're like, it's not fast, because up the street there's a ZR1 with almost 1100. And down the street, there's an SUV that has near 600. So the numbers can kind of skew what the reality is of cars. But what he was speaking about does speak to something that I've said before, and that is they want something as the sound and the feeling. And there is nothing that can really quantify that. You can't really put numbers on it. There are people that are driving old classic 350 V8s in Camaros and Novas and all these other type of vehicles. They're not fast. I mean, a Tesla and anything else is going to blow by it on the stoplight. We don't care. Car enthusiasts don't care. It's not about that. I'm driving a GR Corolla. It is not the fastest thing on the road by any stretch of the imagination. I just enjoy how much the car feels, the dynamics of it, how it feels on the back roads. Just love it. Is there other things that are faster? Absolutely. But it was never only about the numbers. And it's cool to see companies now starting to realize, like, oh, we got a customer base that's willing to pay for something that they desire, which is it's a crazy idea that what is probably business 101, I'm sure at an MBA course somewhere in some college, they're like, make what your customers are buying. If they're at the front door saying, please keep making that cheeseburger like you make it with those fries, and we're going to keep lining up. And then one day you're like, guys, I have a new idea. I want to put another sauce and onion rings on the burger. And then your sales start declining because everybody's like, we just wanted what you had before because we like it. So BMW realizes that they have two markets, Middle East and the US, that are asking for, hey, keep the V8 engine in these cars. And they've done it. See, the new M5, the G90 M5, is a hybrid V8 that makes 717 horsepower by the factory standards. Though, rumor is, it's been grossly underrated, as per usual from BMW when it comes to their cars, that it's making somewhere north of like 800 to the wheels. And the aftermarket is saying, doing a tune in the downpipe and a couple little bolt-ons, we might be looking at 1,000 horsepower sedan. See, back to those numbers being crazy. The numbers is back and forth. It's a nuanced thing, like I said. But what I was getting to is that they figured out how to have your cake and eat it too. Yes, we have hybrid powertrain. Yes, you have a V8. There is a penalty though. Cars are heavy, right? The new M5 is over 5,000 pounds. Everybody's like, this was crazy. This is unbelievable. Now, obviously, it would be great to have lightweight V8, a small block or some small displacement one that is very lightweight, that's in a lightweight chassis car. Maybe we do get to that point, but maybe it costs even more money. But what they were getting at and what BMW and Frank Weber is basically saying is that he recognizes what that market is asking for. So if you go back to Dodge, what we were just talking about, if Dodge was to recognize their market, they should have known when Hellcats and Red Eyes were being loved and beloved by a mass community and being sold that, hey, you need to figure out a way to continue this trend. And if it means like 5 years ago when they knew that, hey, there's these new rules coming on and there's a new CEO coming, there's a new change of pace, they should have been busy back there developing something to show saying, hey, we figured out how to have a hybrid V8 or maybe even a supercharged V8 that matches the rules that we need and continues us down this path. So BMW is now saying that they're not going to stop doing this. And Mercedes learned this hard lesson too. See, Mercedes was making AMG vehicles with twin turbo V8s, standard V8s, 4 years. I mean, SLS, C63 AMGs, CE63 AMGs. They were known for sounding like muscle cars that were European. It was like the guy in the suit, that's very muscular, right? That was kind of like an analogy you would hear. They decided that, hey, we're going to have to match the new Euro rules. I say cafe rules, but it's under some other name. But they wanted to match those rules. So the last C63 AMG had a 4-cylinder turbo that made a crazy amount of power. I think on its own, it made close to 600 horsepower on a turbo 4. That's a lot. Okay, if there was that in the GR Corolla, it would be an insane car. So what happened was nobody liked it. Probably podcasts in the 30s, a long time ago, over a year ago, I had an episode where I talked about that, and I said they have customers that are getting upset about the fact that AMG has ditched the big block, big V8 motors and decided to put a 4-cylinder turbo hybrid, which on paper, back to things being on paper, the numbers said we make more power than the previous generation and we're faster. People started driving the car, and I said nobody was buying AMGs because that want to hear a 4-cylinder turbo. They don't. It wasn't the case. $100,000 car. Listen, I understand that things can be efficient. I'm a proponent of the aftermarket on the tuner JDM side when it comes to us taking 3 cylinders and 4 cylinders and V6s and all this and boosting them up to all types of power. But I also do recognize that there's another side of the equation. If I go and buy an AMG, I'm probably been driving V8 twin turbo ones. I'm not trying to buy and drive in no 4-cylinder hybrid turbo that sounds like it's just always at a high rev. The sound out the back and the feeling just isn't the same. High power, small displacement motors do not have the same feeling, nor the same torque, or the same delivery as V8 motors. So Mercedes learned that lesson. Now they're trying to reverse course. It's going to cost them a bunch of money. BMW probably watched Mercedes and Dodge, probably, look at both of them and say, oh, I see what they did. I ain't making that mistake. We're just going to keep making them because people are buying them, and we're going to make them as long as we can. And Ford said the same thing. Last week, I talked about Ford saying, we're not making boring cars. There might have been the week before that. But what they said was, we're making the V8 engine as long as possible. We already see what's happening. So all these companies aren't dumb. They're paying attention to their rivals. They're paying attention to what consumers are saying. And if consumers are coming back and saying, yo, if you play around and put some 4-cylinder hybrid setup in here, even if it makes as much power as I used to have, if not more, I'm still not going to feel it. So they're coming back. They're saying, Mercedes is saying, we're bringing it back slowly. It's going to cost them even more money. They have to readjust everything that they did before. They have to restructure, re-engineer all these motors that they stopped the suppliers from making. Even Porsche said that about their EV plans. They have to go back to the drawing board and change things up because guess what? High numbers in a Taycan or a Taycan isn't the same as a turbo or a GT3. I mean, it just is what it is. They don't have the same feeling, and they should be approached with a different demographic in mind. I think that most of these car manufacturers, EVs, can work. I think the marketing of trying to appease to numbers is backfiring. Dodge has a Charger. The electric EV went out. I think it is a good car. I think that when you were too busy trying to show 670 horsepower, more power than ever before, more power than any V8, you kind of missed the mark. You basically were isolating people saying, all you care about is numbers, so we gave it to you in a silent car. We gave it to you in a car that doesn't really have a real exhaust. It doesn't match the same. It just doesn't. So Mercedes, BMW, Dodge, and all these companies are rewriting the ship. They're trying to come back and do something different when it comes to how they're producing these cars and how they're presenting them to the market and what they're doing. And I think it's smart. Makes sense. Why not? Like I said, if it's selling, if your customers love it, keep making it. Now, getting into something else, though, not V8 engine related. BMW, though, back to BMW, they did actually release something of an accessory that is, this is definitely for the rich, which, I mean, even if you're buying an M2, M3, and M4, you have the option now for their center lock wheels, which were a BMW accessory that was only available in like Europe or Germany. and the US now can order them for $11,000. So if you wanted center lock wheels on an M2 or an M3 or an M4, they only will cost you $11,000 at the beginning. Because when you add in installation and the necessary tools in order to run a center lock wheels, it gets to basically $20,000 extra dollars on top of the 60, 70, and 80 that you're paying to even have the car. And the reason why is because center lock wheels look dope. I'm not even gonna front. But I mean, they look fire. However, center lock wheels are not really the most intuitive or convenient when you got to change a tire. For instance, these center lock wheels, you need to torque down the one center lock to 930 Newton meters, which is like 700 foot-pounds. Guess what you're never doing? You're never on the side of the road changing a tire. AAA can't help you, okay? You got to go get the special torque wrench, similar to what they do for Porsches. They have that like $5,000 torque wrench, an automatic one that torques it down to the right spec. This is like the same exact thing. Their torque wrench is like $1,300, and you're going to need a friend and somebody probably standing on the brakes in order to get these things torqued down. However, it looks great. Now, I will say this. Personally, if I was to think that spending $20,000 on wheels made any type of sense, because it doesn't. But if I was in that type of world, this is definitely first world American problems, okay? This is definitely not a necessity. But let's just say I was in this world. I would personally just get the kit to change them to center lock and run some other wheels, honestly. I'd get some HRE wheels or somebody else that has center lock wheels. I wouldn't necessarily run the ones from BMW and pay $11,000 for a set. I'm not saying you wouldn't be far off from a normal set from another aftermarket company because forged center lock wheels are never cheap. But hey, listen, if you're balling out of control and you just wanted to take it a next step up on your spec list for an M3, you got some wheels to get now. Center locks. Now, jumping over back to Dodge, because they're back. There's something else to talk about. They have a vehicle coming out called the GLH, or they're using an old moniker they had from the 80s. GLH stands for Goes Like Hell. It was based on Carroll Shelby designed a Dodge hatchback called the Omni. It was like the Omni GLH. It had a 2.2 liter turbo 4, made like 150 horsepower, 2,200 pounds. It was like old school hot hatch, right? People love them. I've seen them sometimes at Radwood. There's a few floating around, right? So they're putting that same GLH moniker on a Dodge Hornet. Now I'm laughing because I'm gonna be frank. I personally don't. I just think the Dodge Hornet isn't really the greatest like exercise in what Dodge could personally do. I feel like it's very much an okay product. I just don't see it resonating that well with performance car enthusiasts. If you just so happen to need some smaller compact SUV in order to get to, I don't know, destination, school, work, travel, then I can see it making some sense. But from a performance, like say hatchback small car, because it's a small compact SUV. So the rendering they have, you see up here on the screen, they were showing it like kind of lower down on bigger wheels. And they haven't had any performance numbers, but I wanted to talk about what it already has if you were to buy a Dodge Hornet now to see where they could go. So right now there's a Hornet GT. They'll start at like $33,000. They make 268 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque and a turbocharged 4-cylinder. Decent numbers. Like I've said before, if that was in a different bodied car, let's say if they thought about bringing back some version of they had a Dodge Dart, Dodge Neon, or the SRT4, so to speak. If we were to think about getting back to that era, I could see them trying to use the Dodge Hornet as that, saying, it goes fast, you can haul your friends, you can haul your gear, you can go to the beach, and on the way to the beach, you can carve up a canyon. I could see the commercial right now. But realistically, if that was in a different body, I feel like it would actually resonate more and kind of sell more, and then throw in a manual for, good measure. However, continuing on, there is also another version, like an RT version that costs like $43,000, and it gets all the way up to $49,000. Now, I'm gonna be honest. At no point in time would $50,000 for a Dodge Hornet make any type of sense. So much so that Dodge themselves said that they are going back to the drawing board on the pricing of that model to bring it back down to a better MSRP. Now, if the GLH model is supposed to be a notch above even the RT, supposedly, if we're gonna follow where that name, that GLH goes like hell, it has to make more than 268 horsepower. And if it makes 300 and like 350 foot-pounds of torque, I mean, that's a good time. Even in a little SUV. I mean, it's not my bag, it's not my cup of tea, but I can see it being kind of a fun. Think of like the Kona N, the Hyundai Kona N or the Ioniq Ns. You know, I mean, that's an electrical with more power, but I'm trying to give you an idea. There are small compact SUV little market. It's very niche, but it could exist. So they're thinking about they're bringing that out. They said at the end of the year. Don't know what it looks like. Hold on. We do know what it looks like because they're not about to redesign the Hornet just to make a GLH option. I don't know what the powertrain is going to be. Most likely it's a automatic of some sort. There is no manual coming to this at all. If they did, I would be stunned. Okay, but they won't be. It'll be automatic. I don't know if it's a CVT or standard automatic, and the price will be really interesting because if an RT Plus is 49,000, I mean, either it needs to be under it, or if they need to change the pricing so much that it becomes the one that's like 47, which is still crazy. I mean, at least for that. I'm not saying that things aren't expensive when it comes to cars. There are GR Corollas that cost over 45,000, and plenty of people are going to say that's a Corolla hatchback. Y'all are nuts. So I guess it is all relative for what you like. But the GLH model, the GLH name is coming back. It's going to be on a Dodge Hornet. We'll see what it looks like when they're done. Now, getting into kind of something I've talked about. I've talked about this before about privacy in cars and just information and all these interconnected cars. There's a funny thing that was going on. So Jeep owners said that some of them have been seeing ads show up on their screen, on the infotainment system, talking about an extended warranty, which is, that's absolutely hilarious. You know the running joke about you get a knock on your door or you get a phone call and they're like, who is this? I just wanted to call you about your extended warranty, or some like all the memes you've seen online, or somebody like comes to the door, they deliver a package, you're like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you about your extended warranty. The mere fact that I'm driving and it pops up my infotainment system is disrespectful. Okay. Are you joking? Of all the things I got to block and dodge when it comes to mail, and then you got the nerve, the audacity to have it come up on my screen when I'm navigating somewhere or listening to a podcast or some music. You got a little ad, and you can see it in the screenshot here. Again, if you're not watching the video, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel and get up on it, okay? Now, the funny thing is, when it comes to all these interconnected cars, this is bound to happen. And I'm sure this isn't news because they're talking about this happen on 2022 models. And some people said they've seen it all the time on other Jeeps and other cars in general. All this interconnected beautifulness that they sell to you, and they say, hey, you can connect to your garage and your house, and if you're listening to music, you can carry it into your house at the same time, and it'll connect to your Wi-Fi, and it'll track your children, and it'll show you where you're driving, and it'll route you to the late, local coffee shop. It'll take you to the store. Like, all this stuff is great, right? All this interconnected, convenience is great when it's sold to you that way, but the majority of the people benefiting the most is always going to be the companies, not the consumer. So if they have an interconnection of knowing when your mileage goes over 36,000 miles, let me just kind of bombard you with an ad in hopes that you click on the call Bluetooth and you call in, and we have a salespeople on the other end trying to convince you like, hey, we just set you up with this and this and this, which is funny because you're driving the car. So I find it hilarious that they would actually even interrupt your drive to say, hey, forget all that safety. Call us on that warranty real quick as you're driving. Like, I'm going to have a conversation about my warranty and then try to pay for it over the phone. But that is what is happening on some of the cars. And I have an experience with that. Yeah, CarQuicks himself. I know this because on our Toyota Sienna, it is connected, or it was. I mean, back then I disconnected all that nonsense. But whenever the car had like a maintenance thing, dealership called me. Hey, we noticed that your car's due for service. Heard the van's due for service. Now, when it had the included service up to like 24,000 miles, I went to the dealership for most of the stuff. I was like, hey, go ahead, take care of it. But I knew after a certain point, I'm taking care of it because you can't do an oil change better than me, because I check over the car better than you will. You're trying to get it in and out. I'm trying to take care of what's driving my family around. So at a certain point, I knew I'm doing an oil change myself because, one, I can get the oil I want. I can get the same filter. I can do all the things I want to do. I can change everything out, check stuff. I'm doing it myself. I'm going to the parts department, give me some things I need. I'm putting it on myself. So I've been doing that. Then the funny thing is, every time it got to like a 5,000 mile interval, they're like, hey, we noticed that. And I was like, I got it, guys. It's done. I'm not paying you $200+ for 3 oil changes. Nah, I'm sorry. It ain't adding up. Even if you try to convince me that a little over, $50 per oil change makes sense, I'm telling you, I went to Walmart and got the oil I needed, or I went to AutoZone and I spent $35 and 30 minutes of my time listening to a podcast in the driveway. Guess what? I'm going to take that route every time. So what I'm basically getting into is that all this stuff, EVs, interconnected cars, more and more of this is coming. If you think this is the end of them trying to figure out how to put ads in the car, it's coming. Them giant LCD screens that are on the front of them dashboards and Escalades and Navigators and EV cars, I say at some point in time, somebody's selling that as real estate for an ad. It's coming. It's coming. I'm telling you, there's no way they're going to be like, you know what? They got a 36-inch wraparound screen. Maybe when there isn't a passenger in the seat, because we can sense when there's a passenger in the seat because we got to turn on the airbag and we have to turn on the passenger seatbelt sensor. When there's nobody in there, that half of the screen, we can display some information that might be relevant to the driver. See, you think I'm crazy. If I'm pitching that idea off the top of the dome, you think the think tank people ain't sitting there trying to figure out how do we finesse this in and we get some ads in there. Maybe we suggest something while you're driving. We notice that you've been driving for a couple hours. You can say, hey, right on the left screen, say, hey, bing. We notice you've been driving for like 3 hours. If you're getting hungry, up the road is a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A. Up the road is a Buc-ee's. Hey, just letting you know. If you feel like going that way, say, take me there. And you're taking navigation reroutes. We're on our way. Listen, this smart minds, okay? I'm telling you. I'm not the smartest person in the world, but if I'm thinking this up, they're thinking it up too. Now, getting into some other less, depressing news about, data and people tracking you and all this other stuff that happens when it comes to these cars in the world that we're living in now. Now, here's a funny update. You remember when the guy drove his Subaru through the dealership and he said they don't want to take it back. He was mad. He said, I'm going to come back and drive my car through the dealership. And they were like, bet, okay, whatever you say. And he came busting through there. Now, unfortunately, that wasn't a wise decision because now the update on that is that he's facing up to 15 years in prison, a $10,000 fine, and a Class 2 felony. I'm positive that whatever he needed to change, that alternator was way less than all this. This was foolishness at the highest level. Now, listen, emotions, I'm not saying that dealerships don't figure out a way to make you get angry. Like, they have a way of doing all types of foolishness that you can just be like, I'm trying to drive my car through the showroom floor. And it happens. I mean, a couple weeks ago, just to like give you an idea of like how dealerships can operate, I'm positive that they probably did something that they didn't disclose to him. He just reacted all the way to the level 10, okay? He probably should have stopped around 3 and 4, but he took it all the way. But a couple weeks ago, this is kind of segueing into it all connects. Just let me land this. A couple weeks ago, there was something that happened with the FTC where a bill that they were proposing to pass got stopped dead in its tracks right when it was about to pass. It was called the CARS Act or something like that. CARS, CARS. And the point of it was that they were arguing that there needs to be a rule in place that protects consumers from dealership practices that hide fees inside of the transaction that consumers do not know about. Let me tell you, if anybody's ever bought a car, you already know that the games that are played at the finance department are top level. Like, if you don't know to check that line going down, give an example. When I first bought a Toyota Sequoia, I was at the dealership. It was some dealership out in San Antonio. Went to go get the car. They're all excited to see you. Handshakes, cars ready. It's right out there in front. Hey, you want some water? You want some snacks? You want this? Let's go in the back, get the numbers ready. We get you right up out of here. Got the keys there. They gave me the paperwork. I remember my brother-in-law was with me. He's sitting in the back. He's sitting down the hallway. They gave me the paperwork. They're like, yeah, we're just getting everything ready and check this out. He was here. I started looking at this number and I said, what's this for $400? Oh, so we did a custom, detail on the job. It's a $500 detail. I looked at him dead in his face and said, who asked you to do that? $500 to detail the car? Do you know what a $500 detail job looks like. It ain't what I'm looking outside with arm roll on the tires. I promise you, that is a full paint correction situation, which y'all didn't do. Okay. Then I was looking again, nitrogen in the tires, $200. Hey, bro, I'll take regular air. Okay. Go ahead and take that nitrogen out and you can go ahead and figure out something else in there because I didn't pay for that. Now, I came when they were about to close. So they were already getting annoyed because I was the last person in there, kind of on purpose. Because I told my brother-in-law, like, listen, we're either gonna go buy a Toyota Sequoia or we're driving back in the same car. Like, I don't care. I'll burn the 4 hours driving back and forth. I don't care. We're not getting played. I'm checking out these. I'm looking at all this stuff. I'm like, what's this? What's this? By the end of it, we were no longer friends. So when I first came in there, handshakes, daps, hugs, how are your kids? They don't know me. They're just asking questions to just keep the small talk going. By the end of that night, folks weren't even looking at me in the eye. They're like, hey, your key's out there in the front in the bucket. I was like, dang, haters. But hey, I got the car at the straight price I said it was. Now, the point of this act, and while I'm saying that example, is that what they were trying to do is say, whenever there are fees, this act will make sure, this bill was to make sure that there is full transparency. You got the MSRP, you have every single itemized fee and list of things there, and then the total price. Guess what happened? They didn't feel it. They weren't liking it. There was a dealership group in Texas, another one probably somewhere else that basically blocked this whole thing from passing on a technicality. And they use some wild examples of what the reasons why. I mean, you're talking about we're trying to pass something that is strictly for the consumer. So you don't have $400 ceramic coat fees, stupid $500 basic tint, $700 lifetime oil change, all this foolishness that you see in every single car. And we call them markups, but every single time you go to buy a car, there's something on there that you did not ask for, which is funny because relationship building on car dealerships and most cars, I'm not saying every single dealership, I'm not saying every single salesperson. I'm just saying for majority of time you walk into a car dealership to buy a car, half the time it's you battling them, wasting your time. Here's the funny thing. The reason why they said part of this was to be blocked is they said that if they were to add this into their cycle, the argument that the dealership group had was that it would add 60 to 80 minutes to the consumer's transaction of buying a car because of untested forms. Yo, the irony of them worried about adding an hour to an hour and a half, an hour and 20 minutes to the overall transaction period is hilarious. Have you ever been to a car dealership? If you listen to this podcast, you definitely have. Tell me if it ever gets completed quickly. Never. When we bought our Toyota Sienna, I had been on the phone with them, had placed the order for this, had waited an entire year. When it was coming, I remember on the phone with them, I was like, can you just please have the car ready? Do not put any of the dealership stickers or license plates on the van. I'm not rolling around advertising your dealership for free unless you cutting a check or we're taking the price off even more. Don't really clean anything because your car wash looks absolutely horrendous because I saw when I was up there. Don't put the car through there because that's just scratches and swirls waiting to happen. I just basically laid out what I needed. When we get there, of course, it's a lot of time wasting. I came there and I said, take me straight to the finance department because if these numbers ain't numbering, we're not doing nothing. They want to tell me, oh, I want to show your wife how the van works. I want to show her how to set up the blue. I was like, listen, I work in IT. There ain't nothing in that manual that I cannot figure out. Okay, how about we get to the numbers? And of course, when we get there, I got to play the bad guy, which is unfortunate, but it's just how they play. They throw things in there. Like, yeah, I'm okay with certain warranties. I'm okay with it as long as you're transparent about it. Don't try to slide it in there. And I'm looking at the bottom line, like, how do we go from this number to this number? Oh, there was some extra fees for the paperwork for $900. Show me that paperwork. Okay, I want to know what $900 paperwork looks like. Okay, because if that's what we're charging, I got a new business case. Okay, I'm gonna go to the bank after today and talk to them about I got a new job opportunity. Okay, it's called $900 business, paperwork. I'm gonna start doing that. So they were trying to help the consumer. They said that if they were to do this, it would have saved the consumer not only the time that you've wasted at a dealership, not only the battle in the fight of trying to get something transparent, you would have saved up to $3.4 billion, which might have been like, I don't know if it was a year, probably every year, just in these fees that are unnecessary. And these aren't fees that are helping the brand of the car company. Unfortunately, the US market has a very powerful dealership network that lobby and spend billions, millions of dollars, probably billions every year to keep their power structure in place. So none of this stuff that I'm talking about is actually going against the dealership. It's going against their bottom line for excess in profit, because it's not like, if this is the tint and the ceramic coating ain't keeping the lights on. And if it is keeping the lights on, then you need to become a detail shop, not a car dealership. That would be my argument. But they said that it would save up to 3.4 billion. The dealerships came back and said, actually, it will add 60 to 80 minutes and it will cost the consumers $1.3 billion in lost time. Yo, this is so funny because they're only trying to find a metric to throw this out because they were close to having it pass. At no point in time has dealerships ever added up the wasted hours trying to buy a car and what it costs consumers, because it has to be north of $10 billion a year of the nonsense. The mere fact that I gotta get lunch when I'm trying to buy a car tells you how long I've been there. You ever go to try to test drive a car? It's 900 questions. It's like the 50 Cent song. I got 21 questions. Hey, how many kids you have? Do you work? Are you married? You ever been in the army? Have you ever filed for taxes? Do you like this color blue? Do you like red? What's your favorite, fruit snack? All this stuff that has nothing to do with you grabbing the keys and bringing the car out front. So they had this, unfortunately, the consumers lost. The building get passed. Now, the funny thing is, even if they said they were to lose 1.3 billion in whatever money from adding these untested forms, we still were up 2.1 billion. So it's like we still were up. They were still trying to help the consumer. That is what's so wild. We were actually on our way to being helped to have something better, and it was taken back. Absurdity. Now, on to something else. Let's talk about Ferrari and how they've had enough of y'all. So Ferrari has had enough. They're like, hey, you know what? It's no longer respect all builds. It's get blacklisted if your build is trash. That's where they're at now. They've said that we have a customization program. So Ferrari, if you're super wealthy, they have a program where you can basically customize a Ferrari to any level you want. And plenty of people have done it. They end up with these $20 million cars that are based off like a 296 GTB or a 488 or something like that. If you have the means, you can go to their customization program and they will make and design anything for you that you want to do. However, as has been shown many times, Ferrari considers, even though you're buying the car, and I can be on both sides of this, even though you're buying the car as your property, you spent the money, they don't want you out there doing all types of willy-nilly, making their cars look like memes and any type of rap and stuff. And they've kind of had enough of people doing it because, one, I think what's happening is that a lot of older Ferraris are becoming accessible to a lot of people, showing you just how much cars have gotten, and where a 360 Modena being $60,000 is actually accessible to the likes of people even like me. And so when you have that happening, a lot more things start happening to them cars. They're no longer considered like the precious Ferrari that came from the dealership. A 360 Modena might get a wide body kit from Liberty Walk if it was me. If it's like an older one with high miles, I'm like, listen, let's wide body, let's have fun. Throw on the air suspension, let's get it cracking. They might have crazy liveries. You might have companies like Mansory that are just making all types of just ridiculous wide body carbon fiber kits that are just in your face, somewhat gaudy, but it's made for a certain clientele. And Ferrari's like, you know what? From here on out, we're going to allow certain things to happen. But a lot of this stuff, if y'all go too far, you're hitting on the blacklist. And we don't care if you can't buy another Ferrari. We don't care if you can't get one later. Oh, well, because you got to go on the secondhand market. Now, it doesn't stop it completely because the secondhand market exists. On the side of the consumer, which is where I land the most, if I buy something and I pay my hard-earned money, it's mine. So I don't care what I do to it, honestly. So I can understand people saying that. And then I understand the people who look at the art form and who Ferrari is. They're my favorite supercar brand. So I get Ferrari looking at their stuff saying, you're kind of tarnishing the brand in a way. And I do get the whole, we ain't respecting our bills anymore. Like, because some stuff, especially in the aftermarket, the tuner scene, some stuff is made and you're just like, I get not having the means to buy like Liberty Walk kits or buy something from Varus or buy something from Voltex or ASM. Like, I understand not having the money to get some of these really high end JDM parts, but some stuff like folks build, it's like, but yeah, you could have. There's an inexpensive option that don't look like this. So I think that's what they're just getting. Ferrari has been doing this for years, right? All the stuff that they do to get like an F80 or LaFerrari is like social media. Who are you? Who do you know? Where do you be? What do you do? It's all these stipulations to buy. And some people hate it. There are people that say, I'm never buying a Ferrari because they make you do all these hoops of fire to get the car, and they'll just buy it secondhand. So this is part of the course for who Ferrari is. I just found it funny that they just had enough and they're like, we're not respecting our bills. We ain't doing none of that. Y'all are getting this stuff packed up and put on a blacklist if you continue to do this foolishness on our cars. But I do wonder what that means for companies like Liberty Walk, specifically because they wide-bodied an F40 and folks was just like, Ferrari probably had the lawyers trying to fly to Japan and find him immediately. And they just did it on the Lamborghini Mirror. So they definitely don't care about your precious classic $1 million supercars. They're chopping them up regardless. And so if you got companies like Mansory, if you got Liberty Walk, if you have all these companies that modify these cars, I do wonder if they're saying they can do it because it's like a secondhand aftermarket thing, or are they talking about owners who bought it directly from Ferrari doing some modification that they don't approve of? It still falls in that line. Like I said, it's a fine line between, do I care because I'm on the consumer side, like I bought the car, I do what I want, and then the other side is like, okay, we trying to preserve the name, and it's a back and forth. Ferrari's just gonna do what they do, which is say, hey, don't touch nothing that we gave you, which is funny considering the fact that they actually bought the car from them. So Ferrari being Ferrari. I still love them though. Cars still look amazing. I still would love to own one if I ever had that chance in this lifetime. Now, there was some other very large news. Funny, there's some jokes in there. There's definitely some jokes. There's also an interesting bit of where do they go next, and that is Nissan and Honda. So, as everybody knows who's ever in the automotive industry, if you've been paying attention to anything with automotive news, you know that Nissan and Honda have been in this merger that they've been trying to pull off for, I don't know how many months they've been talking, but there's a couple rumors of how this even began, and it will kind of segue into what I'm talking about. A friend of mine, David, actually talked about this rumor too, and he said that the rumor was that Nissan was looking to get bought out by Foxconn, which is a Chinese company, big conglomerate. They do a lot of stuff. If you heard of Foxconn, look it up. And the Japanese government essentially came to Honda and forced them to say, you need to go talk to Nissan to make sure that we keep this company within our country and it can't be sold to another company. I don't know how true all that is. It kind of makes sense if you think about Japanese culture and who they are, who Nissan is and who Honda is. I could see them kind of trying to figure something out. Well, right now the talks are either dead or they've been severely halted. And it's because Nissan ain't happy about how Honda was viewing them. So here's what happened. Nissan and Honda have been talking about trying to merge, trying to figure out something to bring them together as one entity. Honda is looking at Nissan like, little brother, little bro, like not big bro, okay, little bro. They're looking at them like a subsidiary of Honda, meaning Nissan wouldn't be their own thing standing toe-to-toe with Honda. They would be something below them under the Honda umbrella. Nissan wasn't feeling any of that. They said that the talks that they had kind of crumbled apart when Nissan realized that they were no longer being considered on the same footing. I found it hilarious because in the midst of all this, I'm like, where's Mitsubishi at? They probably heard them arguing in the back boardroom like, hey, hold on, chill. Let them figure it out. And we're going to back up. We're going to fall back a bit. Because remember, 2 podcasts ago, I said Mitsubishi was saying, we're going to wait and see what this looks like before we decide to join this merger. And I had some people comment back say, nah, they're doing this and this and this. They're doing X, Y, and Z. It's not about that. They're still going to merge with them. And then here we come on this week, find out that Nissan and Honda aren't even happy. They're not even feeling each other. They've been getting to scrapping in the boardroom. And Mitsubishi just been out there eating the hors d'oeuvres and the snacks in the kitchen. Like, you hear him? You hear him back there, right? I told you. Listen, we just got to get back to the Eclipse and the Evo. We'll be good. So all I'm saying is this is funny because it just shows like how hard it is to merge a company, right? One, it shows how hard to merge a company. Two, it's hilarious because they've been talking about this for so long. Every single picture that they show, and I'm not saying these people are photogenic, but every picture they showed of these CEOs in front of the camera, they looked devastated. Like no smiles, deadpan, face to the camera, just like, yes, thank you. Thank you for being here. I didn't want to be here. I have many other things I'd rather be doing. That's what their face said on each one of them. Nissan, Honda, and Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi might have been the only one smiling like, hey, listen, if y'all throw me a bone in this little soiree y'all doing, cool. But everybody else just looked like, I don't want to be here. So now the talks are kind of split. They said at a future date, they will be coming back to discuss some more what they want to do. Now, here's my thing. I don't know when. Let me give you a couple examples. Let's have a fun little talk. Do we think that Nissan is on the same level as Honda right now? I'm not talking about, I know there are fans of Nissan. I used to have a 240 built into an S13 Sylvia. I understand. We can be some Nissan fanboys and fangirls. But I want to talk about 2025 model lineup. Do we think Nissan is on the same level of Honda? I would argue they're not close. Like if we start getting the models together, so you got the Honda Accord, one of the best sellers, competes with Toyota Camry, one of the best sellers. Nissan's next available competitor in that market is the Nissan Altima. The Nissan Altima is so long in tooth right now when it comes to that model that it wouldn't really be considered as that great of a competitor to those cars. I'm not saying that if you bench tested them together that it wouldn't be somewhere nearby, but they've been developing and keep developing the Honda Accord and the Toyota Camry for different generations, so they keep refining it. And the Altima hasn't really been that refined. And the CVT transmission, the issues they had with that and how it drives, it just didn't help their image or that car. And now it's a rolling meme of Altimas and who buys them and what they look like on the road. Them things is dangerous. Okay, so you have that. You have the sedan. Let's say you go to small SUVs. I have said, and I was at the Houston Auto Show last couple weeks ago, and I said that the Nissan Kicks small SUV is actually a good value. It's a good proposition. You compare it to a RAV4, you compare it to a CRV, you compare it to maybe something Kia's doing. I think it can work. It can be a very good thing. I think I like how it looks. It has kind of the updated front grille, kind of boxy, kind of square, kind of sporty, kind of, just has a kind of aggressive look to it. I think it works well. So that could be a good competitor. Then if you get to, let's say, SUVs, Honda has the world with the Pilot. They have Passports. They have the CRV. They're running in categories as a top seller, top performer in those categories. The Nissan Murano, it's fine, but it hasn't been running that great in those categories. You have the Aria, which is the electric one, doesn't really compete with like a Prologue if we're looking at what Honda did with GM and that Ultimate platform. So it's kind of like, okay, now here's where Nissan does have a leg up on them. Their Armada isn't in any level competed from Honda standpoint. Honda doesn't have something that's as big or as capable as an Armada. So the Armada is, if you want a big, capable 4x4 SUV, they have a better option than what Honda does. If you look at the pickup trucks, the Titan is a more full-size truck than the Ridgeline. So the Ridgeline is for people that need to haul something to have a truck bed, but it still drives like a car. It's more akin to maybe like a Frontier than it is a Titan. So they have a leg up when it comes to that. When you look on the sports car side, I know we have the Nissan Z, okay? But if we're just going to be perfectly honest, it doesn't hit the same way that the 350 and the 370Z did because it was too little of an effort for the newest iteration of that car. I'm not saying it doesn't perform. I'm not saying you can't modify it and it performs very well. I'm not saying the numbers can be high. But again, that nuance of it ain't always about the numbers. The whole dynamic of the car and what you see from the aftermarket or from just general consensus about the car, it wasn't that great of an effort to really bring on the lineage of the Z name and what they should have done. So if you take all of that and you take Honda, who has been selling and doing well and being a bestseller and Cars of the Year, then I can see Honda looking at them being like, hey, you're going to be a subsidiary and we might throw you a little couple bones here and there, a couple things. And that's it. And I can see Nissan turning back and be like, nah, we're not doing that. We have history, we have heritage, we have lineage. And they're right, they do. But I've said before, they're not leaning into any of it right now. They have so much stuff from the history. They have so much cachet with like Nismo. If they actually respected the Nismo name and then slap it on things like a Sentra and it didn't do anything. I'm just saying that they have so much at their catalog that they can tap into and bring forward. Like they had the GTR. Honda has nothing for a GTR other than, I guess you could take the Acura NSX, which is still Acura Honda, but the GTR was running rampant as the halo thing of Nissan, but there was really nothing that kind of trickled down into the rest of the fleet. And Honda didn't have anything to answer that, but the Nissan R35 GTR is dead. It's done. They stopped making it. Who knows what the next iteration looks like? So overall, Honda is it would be the better of the car companies. And if you think about mergers, and maybe I'm not a business professional, I don't have an MBA, but from what I've seen working at companies that have merged with other companies, I worked at places that we bought other companies and they merged with us. Guess what name we took? The company that bought them was the name. My dad used to he retired from working for United Airlines. Continental was where he started. Continental got bought by United. It wasn't called United Continental or Continental United. It was called United because they were the bigger company. So Honda's saying we're the bigger company. We got all the bread, all the skin in the game, and you're just coming along for the ride. I'm assuming they were saying they would be Honda. I don't know what. I don't think that they would just do away with the Nissan name because that'd be kind of crazy. But hey, we've lost car companies before. Pontiac don't exist anymore. But what I'm saying is, I think they were saying you're going to be a notch under us, which I don't think is bad. I think Nissan maybe takes that road for now, improves what they're doing, and then maybe later on take off and do their own thing. But ain't no merger happening right now. All that merger talk has come to a close. They're no longer doing it. I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't even really, honestly, funny enough, it wasn't even like they were talking about cars are going to be made. I don't even know what was going to be made. There wasn't even like a render. There wasn't we made jokes about Nissan Type, a GTR Type R. We made our own jokes, but we don't really know what was going to happen. This might have been strictly just business on the numbers, all the paperwork on the back end type deal. It might have been nothing that was for real as far as what the cars could have been. We'll see what happens next. Now, getting into just kind of wrapping this up, Aston Martin showed off their LeMans race car based on a Valkyrie. It looks like this. This is fire. And the dope thing about what Aston Martin did is they're the only people on the grid for this upcoming LeMans season that actually has a road-going car, because this is based on the Valkyrie that you can buy if you got $4 million. Now, in the race trim, it's detuned to 680 horsepower because the road-going one makes 1,000. Same V12 from Cosworth, 11,000 RPM car. I've seen videos of like Doug DeMuro driving one. Sounds insane. Saw one in Houston because somebody has one out here. It sounds nuts. Now, I've never seen one driving on the road at full speed or full tilt, but all the videos I've seen of them test driving, reviewing this thing has been like, it's legit Le Mans level car on the road. Now, the interesting part is I didn't read how much this weighs as far as in race trim, because I'm assuming it's even lighter than this road going one, because you're doing away with any and everything that probably adds weight to it from a safety standpoint or just from a comfort. We're trying to fit occupants in here. We just need to fit one person in this race car, so we can do away with all the extra stuff. So it's probably even lighter weight, even higher downforce, more performance, because it's not trying to drive on the street where it needs to have side view mirrors and go over speed bumps and navigate driveways. This is a straight race car. And it's the numbers of the car. This one is called, they have a green one, they have the blue one. One is called the 007 fitting. That's perfect number to put on the race car. And the other one's 009. And this is all going to be in the WEC IMSA race series. So I'm excited to see that running up against all the other competition. I just thought it was a dope looking car just to see what they do. Now, before I get out of here, GR Corolla Updates, your favorite segment. There are none because I've been busy. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't even got anything to update about parts or anything like that. I'm just saying I haven't even driven the car that much. I went over to Catalina. I just do that every Sunday. Cool to just meet up, see some cars, see some people, talk to friends and meet there. Just the average stuff I always do. But no, the parts coming, not yet. I don't have anything on. I have something coming. It's just not here yet. And the stuff I plan to do, I just was busy doing other stuff and put it on the car. So listen, if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, I want you to do more videos on the GR Corolla. What are you doing? You are the one that was doing all of them. I know. I got stuff in the tuck. You just listen. The podcast is another love of mine. So we're just gonna have to follow. We're just gonna have to ride this train. Okay, listen, I'm here for the pod. Okay, mainly this is the foundation of the CarQuicks, universe. Just ride along. Now, good thing is I went to Catalina and I ran into somebody that I have been wanting to talk to about a car they have. I don't even want to give this away because, one, it was nice to meet the gentleman that owns it. I've only talked to him on Instagram. I saw him walking by. We both looked at each other. We were like, hey, I know you. And I was like, we've talked on Instagram, I believe. We had a quick conversation about the car he has. And I was like, I want to just talk to you and do an interview with you on the car. Now, I've said many moons ago, there was an idea I had about doing interviews with owners that have interesting cars, and I passed out my business card to people to do it, dropped it in car seats, said, hey, I want to talk to you about the car in hopes that somebody would email me back. No, I haven't gotten anything back, but guess what? It doesn't mean I'm not going to stop because this guy was one of those same people. So if this happens within like the next week or so, that I go there, interview him to talk about this car, you're going to see this video on my channel. I don't know. I might put it under the same. I have this series called Past the Fob. I was going to name it something else, but I think it kind of matches because Past the Fob was me about reviewing cars when I get to driving more cars and reviewing them. But I also think it makes sense from owners. I might call like Past the Fob from the owner's eyes or something. I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to do some things. Okay. Give me some time to think about a way to kind of have an angle on that name. But if I do, in the next coming weeks, you're going to see that video up there. So get excited because this ain't no normal car. And it's not a supercar. But when I say it's special, and I say we're talking about a one of one, when I was talking to him, he said he's even nervous to drive the car because of how rare and how much you can't have this built again. It was built by a very special person. I couldn't even believe he was able to buy one. I had to talk to him about that. I said, how do you even get to that point of him selling this to you? And he explained that it was a 2-year journey of building a relationship with this person in order to get the opportunity to buy one. So we ain't talking about no regular, okay? So I'm excited for that. As always, everything is going well. I appreciate all the support. The podcast has been growing and growing and growing, and I love it. And the GR Corolla stuff is coming. Do not sleep, okay? I like to pace things. I don't want to just shoot off the entire chamber and bullets I have and I got nothing else left. We got a whole year to go. It's 2025. We just began. It's only February. We got things to take care of and do. We got auto shows coming up. We got sports events coming up. We got motorsports events coming up. We got things happening. But until then, as I always say, thank you for being here. One, that's a new one. I'm throwing that in there. Thanks for coming. Thanks for enjoying. But as always, do as you wish and do as you may. This was another episode of the CarQuicks podcast. Cameron Biggs, your host. I'm going to see y'all next week. Take care. Peace.